So today's topic that we're going to discuss is a common misconception that a lot of people have, and that is when a lot of people think that rarity automatically equates to value. And one example that I'll give is using a different category of collecting, which would be in video games. And there's a company called Limited Run Video Games that actually makes limited edition versions of video games where sometimes there are only digital versions available, but they're going to do a limited run of physical versions of like for PS5, Switch, and all that stuff. And they're going to say they'll only do this one time. And then when you think about it, when it comes to the terms of collectibles, you have to be really careful because if products are structured around the fact that it's rare and that's their selling point, then you should think really hard about whether or not this is something that will be valued if you're someone that's thinking about investing in it. Another example that I'll give from the video game industry would be this version of the Mega Man X cartridge, where they only made 8,500 of them, and this was released maybe like a couple years ago. Until this day, it's still sitting unsold, even though that it went on sale multiple times. And I'll give one more example, and that was from the last touchdown ball that sold recently from Tom Brady's retirement for $500,000. And then literally right after it sold, he announced his unretirement. So the main point that I want to make is that when it comes to items that are classified as rare, there's a lot of factors that go into it prior to you actually thinking about even investing in it to begin with. And the most important part about this when it comes to thinking about investing and collecting these collectibles, especially considering how expensive sometimes they are, is first you have to be able to detach your emotions when it comes to this. And I always like to tie this back to when it comes to making our decisions in life when it's tied to our emotions. Think about all the times that you've made a lot of mistakes when you've argued with someone, a spouse, a significant other, a family member, where anytime you involve your emotions and you've ever made rash decisions because of it and said things that you regret that later on you wish you could have taken back, that applies directly into when it comes to making financial decisions, when it comes to investing, as well as collecting collectibles. When it comes to making decisions about finance, you have to be very objective about it. And what I mean by objective is that we're not going to put our own personal feelings or, thoughts and viewpoints into it. And we're going to try to imagine and examine things for what they are. And when it comes to collectibles, it's the exact same thing, right? And I have some examples of some things that we might consider a little bit rare, but does it mean exactly that it's going to be stonks and going to the moon? No, because I understand that when it comes to collectibles markets, there's a lot of nuances to it that you have to think about. And a lot of times we involve our emotions because we think that, oh, you know what? I really like this thing, so I'm going to defend it till the end. And the first example that I'll give is this Maximum Carnage Super Nintendo game that's still in its box, right? And I really liked this game as a child, and I think that, Super Nintendo games in box are considered rare, and maybe it'll be hard to come by. But I have to be able to detach the fact that it's a video game at the end of the day, and there's not really a lot of population reports when it comes to the video game industry. And at the end of the day, these things are very, very, very speculative. And for someone that might not be able to be objective about it, they might think, you know what? Maximum Carnage, Marvel, it's really big right now. I'm going to buy every single copy of these, and then it's going to be stonks and going to the moon because it's old, right? But a lot of times you have to realize that just because an item is old or a little bit harder to come by, it does not automatically equate to actual value of the item. And you have to be able to separate that. And then another example that I'll give is also, it would be this Disgaea Meister box, right? I have the Disgaea Meister boxes as well as the Fate Unlimited Bladework Meister boxes as well too. And you might consider like, you know what? These items might be considered a little bit rare and they're harder to come by, right? But again, when we think about like the actual price point of these items, someone could buy all of these out. And I think some people have tried to do it and they tried to resell them for $200-$300. But again, when you think back to it, just because it's out of print, does that mean that automatically it means that it's super valuable and people are willing to pay the price? And keep that in mind when you think about this, and think about how just because something is rare, something is valuable, does that automatically mean that people are willing to buy it? And I'll use two more Weiss Schwarz cards as an example. And the first one I'll show you would be the Shiyoko Fest PR card. And pretty much, if you think about this, just because a promo card is rare and maybe there aren't that many copies out there, does it automatically mean that a card is automatically valuable and should be priced at like thousands and thousands of dollars? No, in this case, maybe this card probably goes for like $100, $200 or whatever it is, right? And just because I put, a certain value on it, that I think it's a precious card to me and I like it and as part of my collection, again, we have to be able to detach the fact that I personally like this card. It doesn't mean that it's automatically very valuable to anyone else other than me, right? Like the second card I have is another Shiyoko card, and it's pretty much just like, I think, a business card or something like that, but it's actually like a Weiss Schwarz card. So again, right, just because something might be a little bit rare and there isn't a lot of them out there, does it automatically mean that it should be something that's an expensive item? Again, think about that. And the last example that I'll give is a market that I'll talk about is when it comes to sports cards and wrestling cards and other like niche card games in general, right? When it comes to sports, I guess I don't know if you could really consider wrestling a sport. It's more of like a show, but sue me, right? I like watching it. And they have numbered wrestling cards. So in this case, I have a 1 out of 10 Kenny Omega card. But again, does it automatically mean that just because it's serialized numbered 1 out of 10, does it automatically mean that this card is worth like a bajillion bingo bucks? No, right? There's a lot of factors that go into these markets, like, what brand the card is made from, how the card was signed, when, what's the condition. All these things you have to consider. So after giving all these examples, you'll come to realize that just because an item is rare and people hype them up to be these like holy grails or whatever it is, you have to realize that the price of these items a lot of times don't really have a logic behind it, and a lot of times is driven by emotions, and hype is one of them. And I'm actually glad that I have this Disgaea Meister box here as well too, because when it came to this item, people tried to sell this item for like hundreds of dollars, but there was zero demand for it, right? And again, going back to just because something is old, something that's a little bit more rare, and there isn't a lot of them out there, does not automatically equate to the fact that it means that the value will be higher automatically and there will be a demand out there for it. And I'll give another example of something that's really, really old that I have. And this is a Battleship board game from Milton Bradley from like, I don't know, like 50, 60 years ago. And it's super old, right? And I personally want it in my collection of items because it had a very sexist depiction of men and women where the son and the father are playing, Battleship while the mother and the daughter are, in the kitchen washing dishes, right? And it's one of those things where you have to realize that just because items are old does not automatically default, once again, to the actual value of the item. People have to be willing to pay for the item at a certain price point for that to even happen to begin with. And that's something you have to be very, very, very careful about, because I say this over and over again, and a lot of people think that, I'm very anti-investing, anti-collectible investing, anti-graded card investing, and all this stuff. But I just want people to realize that when it comes to these markets, unless you do a lot of research, you spend all your time doing this, these markets are very, very, very fickle, and it's very easy for you to buy some of these items and for them to bottom out on you within like pretty much the same year. And again, I'll just go back to the fact that I work in the finance industry, and I find it very, very, very irresponsible that a lot of these YouTubers out there, a lot of these people in these social media groups are telling people how to invest their money when it comes to collectibles and card games, because I don't know what kind of like basement, economics that they're into, they automatically equate everything to just because it's rare, it stonks, and they try to pretty much explain everything through it's supply and demand. But you have to realize that the demand for collectibles a lot of times are very manipulated and very artificial. And when it comes to even financial markets, a lot of times these things can be manipulated as well too. And until you realize that, it's very easy for a lot of us, especially if you're struggling working, you're going paycheck to paycheck. That's why a lot of people stay poor and they're not able to, pretty much have social mobility because they're stuck always falling for these type of traps when it comes to how they spend their money and how they invest their money. And I'll just flat out say it, right? If you haven't watched my video about, the dark side of collecting when it comes to, trading cards and collectibles, when it comes to thinking about investing in these things, remember, if you don't have everything in order, you don't have your life figured out, if you have a lot of, responsibilities that you barely meet because you're going paycheck to paycheck and you don't have a savings, and whatever money that you have set aside every month, you're thinking, oh man, I'm going to buy this when I get my next paycheck, then you really need to evaluate your living situation and just think about how you're planning for the future. And a lot of times you have a lot of resources when you work at a lot of companies, such as if you have a 401k, you could speak to someone probably in those departments where they're able to give you some sort of financial advice, or just seek out an actual licensed financial advisor, right? Of course, there's a lot of bad ones out there, right? But that's still way better than listening to advice on all these forums and on social media and YouTube, and some guy flipping off their chair telling you, oh yeah, this Pokemon booster box is gonna go to the moon. I'll say it again and again and again. It's very easy for someone to tell you, buy this PSA 10 Charizard, buy this PSA 10 Bunny Girl Mai. And if you lost all your money and you bottomed out the next day, these people, once again, will not feel any remorse for you, and no one will feel bad for you that you listen to some random strangers online telling you that this is the Stonks card and this is the Holy Grail. It's literally like someone telling you, you know what, this turd I picked up off the street, it's one of a kind and you'll never find another one like it. And if you were dumb enough to actually buy it, then you're the only one at fault, and that's pretty much why no one will feel bad for you. But I make these videos because there's just not enough of the opposing opinions where people just say everything is hype, everything is stonks, and all you have to do is just buy sealed products, right? And it's really, really irresponsible. And it's just very, very easy, especially when it comes to card games and Weiss, Schwarz, and certain franchises, right? Even Pokemon. You might be really into Charizard and Pokemon. You might be really into Blue Eyes White Dragon and, Yu-Gi-Oh! And you personally feel like, you know what, 30 years from now, this is the type of stuff that the kids will appreciate. But think about it. Think about all these fads that happened in the past 20, 30, 40 years, right? Things like Pogs, things like, comic books in the 90s, things that happened at some point and everyone thought it was the next big thing. Beanie Babies. And then, everyone's trying to collect these one-of-a-kind things, especially nowadays when it comes to video games and things that are just like, oh, there's only 1,000 of them out there. There's these serialized number cards. It's one of one. And, that's why it's so rare. Think about this really, really hard before you put your hard-earned money into it. So, pretty much in conclusion, I know I sound like a broken record if you watch all my other videos, but it just seems like a lot of people still feel like it's all stonks and everything's just to the moon. And every single day, I just see people shilling for these My cards, shilling for, all these other Grail cards like Albedo, Overlord, and all this other stuff. And I feel like there's just not enough information out there for the people that are thinking about buying these things, especially since we know that most people nowadays, honestly, are struggling paycheck to paycheck. And a lot of people don't know how to budget. A lot of people don't know how to save their money. And they end up buying some of these things when they're not financially fit to do so. I mean, at the end of the day, you know what? whatever you do with your money is kind of just up to you, and it's like a personal choice. But I feel all I can really do is when I can give some sort of advice from my experience working in the financial industry. If I could even help a single person, then I feel like I do good in the world. But just trust me, okay? Probably like 99% of the people out there that are thinking about investing in card games, investing in collectibles, realize that, especially for the past 2 years, a lot of these markets are just driven by hype. Pokemon tanked, and a lot of people sat in these rooms with like tons of products. How many of these live breakers did we see disappear because they thought it was stonks and they were buying up everything and trying to double, triple, quadruple the price for people that are breaking? A lot of people are still falling for it because, these live breaks are still around, but you have to be very, very, very careful. The last tidbit that I'll probably leave you with is that if you're not financially established, you want to learn how to budget, you want to learn how to save for your retirement, and collectibles is probably not what it is you need to go into. If you work at a company, you have a 401k, you have a retirement plan, most likely you have resources available to you and people available to you for free to talk to in your company if you just look into like your company website or whatever it is. And that's just something you might want to think about. So pretty much I'll just leave off with that. Remember that when an item is rare, it does not automatically equate to the actual value of an item. And for you to really be able to understand how much an item is actually worth, it requires a lot of time and a lot of research when it comes to these things. Not just listening to some random schmuck on these forums or Facebook groups telling you that this is what the rare item is. And if you think about it hard enough, you'll realize if you have that much time to do research into these collectibles like an idiot like me, then wouldn't you be better off just analyzing like actual financial markets where there's always going to be a way for you to sell things like stocks, as opposed to if you invested in like a PSA 10 Bunny Girl Mai or a PSA 10 Charizard, there's just so much BS that you have to deal with in order to even find a buyer for these cards or to even sell these cards, and just so many things that could go wrong. Your time, money, effort, and emotions are probably better well spent elsewhere. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching the video, and if you haven't subscribed yet, then please consider it, and things like liking the video and commenting what you think about the things that I talk about. But yeah, I hope over time I can earn your subscription as well as deserve the subscriptions that you guys already give me. And I hope you guys continue to enjoy the videos that I put out. When it comes to finance, economics, and just learning about money and the value of it in general, I feel like there's just not enough of these type of videos out there where there's actual genuine information, where someone's just trying to, teach you these things with no strings attached. Because I myself come from a background where my parents knew nothing about finance, and it's very easy when you're pretty much in the working class to get stuck in this pretty much like a never-ending perpetual cycle of pretty much poverty. And it's very easy to have this like poor people's mentality where you think that you know everything, and a lot of times you fall for all these traps because you're just so stubborn to listen to actual advice, like good advice when people give it to you. But yeah, life is short. I hope that I'm able to just show all these common pitfalls that a lot of people fall for, so whoever watches these videos could avoid it and kind of learn from it. But thank you again for watching, and have a great day. Oh yeah, and also, if you like these type of content where I talk a little bit more about finance and actually like learning how to save your money and just like things to avoid when it comes to like, financial pitfalls, then let me know, because I do enjoy talking about these topics, and I feel like it's one of those things that really help people. All right, take care.